Coming to you from our studio here in Sydney and streaming all around the world, it's Still Life Crisis with Llewellyn Skye and Deni Rayneau.
He's such a ham. Hey,
we need the big shot.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need.
Oh, the clapperboard.
Episode 4. I can't believe we got to 4.
I know, it's been a climb.
So I thought it'd be good to, because we did timestamp a topic that we were starting on to do with inspiration and theming in our work. And I know I was sort of starting to talk about how I'm exploring pink, and pink has turned into punk, and punk has turned into resistance. And then we were talking about the Monstrous Woman as something that you're exploring. And I had a little look into them, and kind of the feminine theme of pink, punk, Monstrous Woman, all kind of they intersect in some way. So I thought that it might be a really cool little exploration for us today.
Yeah, there are so many different explorations around that theme. But yes, let's do it. You know, it's a brilliant theme. And yeah, it can go in all different directions, not just because Barbara Creed's original, her book is about horror films, and the characters in film, she looks at certain horror films, which I do not do horror. Do you watch horror films?
No.
Me too. I am the biggest scaredy cat in the world. I can't even watch Jaws. Like, everyone laughs, like anything scary, even ads, if the music starts to go do 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 or whatever, I'm out. But anyway, the way that she, like this book is, she talks about how the characters in horror films, and like I said, certain ones, and went into detail, which I'm still working it all out. The woman is either the monster or the victim, and it's what is happening in society. The patriarchy project how they want us to act onto this character. So, for example, some of the characters might, they might not listen to what they're being told what to do, or, they're not doing the typical female role, so they're a monster. So in other words, they're saying, well, if you act this way, that's very monstrous. But if you do the right thing, you're going to be like the good character, and you'll listen to what the patriarchy are telling you to do,
Yes. So basically it's about reducing women into certain areas that is acceptable and okay, and not seen as too much. Because too much was probably the words that I heard the biggest, which is often a theme in my work, is this idea of being too much or not enough. And the idea that as women, as soon as we do anything that's a little bit more, we're too much. We're already too much. We don't need to do much to be too much, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Too much, too loud, too messy, too wild, too
angry, too ambitious.
Yeah, too annoying, too much nagging. And it's been going on for years and years and years, being told, no, that's too much. Yes, you do that. That's the right thing, And I actually recently, with my project, looked even further and went back to look at witches, and the idea that witches were monstrous. And so let's have witch hunts, because these women that are into herbs and healing, and they're midwives, they have this power that was not understood. So they're like, all right, well, they're going to ruin all our crops and we should kill them. And they did. And there are still witch hunts going on. So, it's been happening forever. And where women, that connection with nature that we have, in that intuitive connection, is being, or has been, pulled apart further and further and further and further.
Yeah. And, I love that that you dive into witch, because that's a term that I love, and I love to reclaim for what it actually is, which is kind of that magical part of being a woman and being in your intuition and kind of knowing things without needing to be told them, and how women in their power are feared. And again, it's been too much. And so needing to silence women so that they're and making all of that kind of magical stuff, really downplaying it, making it feel like you're kind of a bit crazy if you're into all of that stuff or into that woo-woo stuff. And actual fact, it's a humongous part of being a human, and it's both men and women, but it's the matriarchy and patriarchy that's the problem, because we live in such a patriarchal society where all of the things that are more feminine are put down or seen as less. So it's such a big topic. I look at, and I've looked into a lot of goddess archetypes. And when I was looking into the Monstrous Woman, some of the archetypes that I know quite well came up, like Medusa and Lilith, or Black Moon Lilith. And as you say, the idea of witch or crone, and all these places that they hold such power. All of those archetypes hold such power, but they're seen, have been seen as such negative words in to try and reduce that power, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And women have been working on this theme and talking about this for a while, but it seems like it's still, we really need to shout it out. Like, it's amazing how it has been so many years, and yet you feel like what progress has happened. I mean, there has been a lot of progress, but there still is so much to do. And like you say, it's not like men are bad and women need to take over the world, but it's that balance. It's not like, why is there a divide? Why can't we all work it out and be in that cycle and equally, looking after the earth and looking after each other and our ideas and stuff like that?
Yeah, which is why I think if you use the terms feminine and masculine, it makes a difference, because everybody has feminine and masculine in them, whether you're a man or a woman. So, a man can equally be intuitive and feeling and magical. It's just that, when you look at it from the patriarchy or from the masculine, that's all the kind of logic and less emotion, and that's what we've been, society runs on, is kind of like power over and succeeding and getting ahead no matter what. And there's this other more feminine, living in tune with the earth and taking care of and nurturing and going within and using your sense, your intuitive senses to kind of know. And I think, what you said before, Skye, about us having made so much progress, it feels like we're going way backward at the moment. I'm hoping that it's kind of like the tip of an iceberg, where you go backwards before you go way forwards. That's what I'm hoping that we're at the moment in the world.
And the pendulum, and which is true in history. The pendulum, and it swings, and then it settles, and then it swings. So, in history, there's always been things that goes way one side and way the other, and then it settles down, and then it happens again. So, as a cycle of history, I suppose you're just, where's the world at the moment on that crazy cycle? But yeah, so with those ideas and translating it into art, that's the interesting thing, right? Yeah. And I feel like we're very similar with our paintings, in the way that, my paintings definitely, people either love them or hate them, because they are a lot and they are intense and really colourful and big. And I try to settle down. I try to do calm. I have done occasionally calm paintings, but it's just not in me. Like, it's just, all this stuff in me needs to come out. And people are like, whoa, wow, that's whoa, but it's a good thing, right? And exploring the theme, and like we were talking before, we didn't even realize we were exploring, that we were on the same train of thought. It's kind of great to look up and go, oh, wow, that's where I fit. That feels comfortable. It resonates with me, and to lean into that for more inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of like a common theme that's alive, And so it feels like a lot of creatives will be diving into it because it feels like a very alive theme on the planet. So it's not surprising that, while we might be coming from different angles, it is this sort of theme of, for me, the idea of being too much and feeling like I put too much into my art, and like, where is that kind of intersection between being too much and allowing myself to be all that I am, and then feeling not enough, and that kind of like, where do those two things sit, and where do they sit in creating art? I notice it when I'm creating, when I'm just really letting go, and then it's like, oh, that's a lot. What am I going to do to balance this? What am I going to do to pull this back have some quieter areas? And noticing how much more acceptable they are to a viewer when you've got that balance right. But then how much do you lose the essence of what you're trying to say? Like, can I be everything and not have to pull it back so that I'm more acceptable?
Yeah, totally. And it'd be sad to feel that, like, I feel like when I'm making those decisions, it's more about what's working for me in the studio at the time. And for that particular painting, I'm not thinking about the viewer. So it just happens, doesn't it, naturally? Like, you just do it because you either feel like your emotions are a little bit different. Sometimes you need to get a lot out. Sometimes, we're a little bit calmer. Or, like I said, sometimes the painting needs that. Don't you love how it's like us, what we put into the painting, right? And then it's not about us at all. It's about the painting. And it's like, all right, what is the painting telling me? What does it need? Does it need more? Does it need less? I love that shift as well. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing.
And that shift that happens on reflection. So you have you have your session in the studio, you then go home and you come, and that's when you're looking at your photos of it, or you're looking at, you come back into the studio and you're looking at the paintings, and that's when your critical mind comes into it and you think, okay, where am I at with this? What's it saying? How does it feel? I'm kind of interested in when you're doing that and you've got your critical brain saying, oh, it does need a bit more balancing, or it needs a little bit of calmer areas. Where's the balance there where you're losing that kind of message of the monstrous woman or being too much? And do you allow yourself to put more in rather than take away?
Well, I always refer to it as, I love how you called it the critical brain. I love that, because I often with my students talk about right and left brain. And I would have with you when you were there. I find when we're in this, and I know there's not just two sides of the brain, but I find when we're in the flow, we're in the right side. We're in the creative side. We're not judging our marks and ourselves. We're responding intuitively and in a raw, beautiful, magical way. And then that's what you call the critical brain. I say the left side takes over, and you stand back and go, oh, shit, I shouldn't have done that, or whatever. Or then you start, and then you make a mark when you're in the left side. I don't know about you, but for me, I'm like, oh, I just lost that flow. So, and that's not a rule for every painting, but I find that happens often, that if I can stay in the right side as long as possible and out of the left, and only let the left have a little bit of say, and at a certain point, like you say, like after you doing it all, okay, you're going home, you're reflecting, or you're turning it around or whatever. It's a real balance. And I have often let that left side come in, and then I'll look back at photos and go, oh, I should have just trusted myself, and I should have just walked away and let that wild, messy painting or whatever it was stay at that magical moment, and I shouldn't have tried to fix it,
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, when you do, or when I do bring in the left side or the critical side, my work gets stronger, because like I have an exploration that feels really wild, and there's lots of color and lots of marks and lots of energy. It feels great. I then, go into the critical brain, which is generally when I'm not so much in the studio or in a flow of painting, and I'm thinking, okay, what does it need? Does it need more balance? Does it need quieter areas? And then I tell my students this: once you've thought about it all logically, once you've decided, okay, this is what I think it might need, you then let that go, and you go back into flow. So that's just like something that you have in mind, but then when you're creating, that side's got to go. Otherwise, like you say, it becomes too much like a put a mark here, silence here. I find that as long as I kind of have been in that critical brain when I'm out of the studio, I can then infuse that into my work when I'm in flow. But that part of my brain has to not be in the studio. I try and get rid of that side as much as I can when I'm painting.
And can you recognize it? Like, I feel like you can, and I can, and I think it takes a while. It's like muscle memory. You can feel it the minute that you flick out. What's the word? Not flick. Jump out of the switch out of that zone. You can physically feel it.
Exactly, the physical. It's like your body just becomes slightly, you can just feel a shift, and it's like everything becomes a little bit tighter. You can kind of feel a little bit, not fear, but just that apprehension. Doubt. And then it's like, oh, and sometimes, and I think you're right, that it is muscle memory, because in the early days I would do that, and it would take me a while before I'd realize, oh, I'll look at the painting and go, oh, holy shit, I've completely lost that one. And now it's more, oh, look at that mark, that is not where I want it to be. I need a break, or I need to get myself out of this, listening to music or moving. And it's such a physical thing. It's such a physical. If I'm feeling tense, then my paintings look tense, and then people feel tenseness when they look at my work.
100%. And you can sense the energy when you look at work, I think. Sometimes you can't, but often you can feel that. And it's not just painting. I'm sure it crosses with all art and creative things, but, just it can feel overworked, contrived, not that natural flow. And that's fine. Like, that's cool. It happens, right? We're not perfect. And naturally, I also think that as we grow up, we're conditioned to be like that. And not just as in being a female and the monstrous feminine thing. I think just in general, society says, oh, you've got to fit into there, and you've got to do that, and you can't color in outside the lines, and don't make a mess, and you can't put blue and green together without a color in between. All of the rules. So naturally, if we're learning, or even still, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, naturally the brain does want to take over. I think that's the thing. It wants to take over the logical side. And it's all of those things going, that's not a painting, that's not a flower, that's not a face. What are you thinking? And that's what that left side, or, whatever you want to call it, side is trying to sabotage all of the good stuff.
Yeah. And it was, I also think that piece of when you get that when you're painting, when you're being creative, it's more about that, discovering those bits within you. So where do I feel like I'm too much? When do I want to look more acceptable? When do I find that that part of me, whatever it is, the messy part or the wild part, or the that wouldn't be accepted in terms of the colors and how I express it, and you realize that all you're really doing through being a creative or being an artist is discovering more, or revealing more, or unbecoming all those things that society makes you become. And the more you get to the truth, the more your work improves, and the more it shows kind of like that authentic place.
Yeah, and I remember distinctly, Joan Mitchell's work, abstract expressionist.
Yeah. Love her
looking
work.
at her work. I was preparing for a show at the end of 2019, just before COVID, and I was looking through her book, and all of us, I never really not understood, because I don't want to say that word, but I never really related or responded to her work up until that point. And I was looking through it, and all of a sudden it spoke to me. And it's like, if Joan Mitchell can do that and drop the brush, because she is, I think, a pioneer for that. And a lot of the abstract expressionists and the second generation abstract expressionists, because they had the guts to throw all that paint down and break all those rules. And I know it's happened in history other ways. But she has really been a catalyst for me to own my mark. And I tell my students this all the time and show her work, and especially in the 50s as a woman. So here we are going, being a woman, and it's been so much harder. But her talking about breaking the rules of colour and doing whatever you like, you look at her work and, you know, textbook, that shouldn't happen and that shouldn't go together, but it's masterful. It's amazing. So she's really great and I think it's always good to look at other artists, especially previous artists in the past, and learn from them. And I think she definitely is a big advocate for that.
I know, and I often, when I look at her work or I look at other women that have created with that kind of freedom, I wonder, what is today's version of that freedom? How much more free can we get in our creative expression that shows that that level of freedom? But I guess as times change, the themes change, and that creative expression of a woman then, while it's still relevant now, maybe there's other things that's going on the planet that are calling us to create in different ways that show this time. That's just kind of like a query. I'm not even sure what it is that we're doing. Sometimes you got to kind of look back to see it.
100%. And they were responding to the war. So they were painting from emotion because there's so much inside of them. They just had to come from that place. So they were absolutely painting, responding to what was happening in their world. And that's going to keep happening. And like I say, you can't tell until after, really, or put a label. You know, when they say, all right, that's Impressionism, and that's abstract expressionism and Cubism and all the isms and the whatever. You can't see an overall picture, of what you're doing at the time until later. So if only we had like a magic ball, hey, just to go, what the hell is going on right now? What will they be saying in 50 years? What will they call us? Will we be the, I don't know, the technologies, the artlish? What will we be?
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating to think of. And you can almost look back over like fashion times and what was happening at the time of like punk and, new romantics and all these kind of names that they had. And you look back and you go, oh, you can so see, what 70s was and what the 2000s look like. But now it doesn't feel like I can't sense it. There's nothing that I can get a sense of what we're doing right now that makes us unique.
Yeah, well, the spectrum's so big now. So there was just, more of a, what would I say, a pull towards the thing. Whereas now with technology, and I think that's a huge thing that we have that is new. I know it's not just brand new, but considering kids now are born completely in a world they've never experienced life without technology, and how quick you can get information, that absolutely is changing the art world and the world in general. And then again with AI. So I feel like that's going to be a big thing about what happens with that. There'll be many things, but that's the thing as well. There are, there's anything and everything. So we might be the non-art.
Where do you see it change? Technology, if you look at it from your perspective, where do you see it changing it at the moment? Where do you see it changing it the most in the art world?
AI is absolutely a new thing in the art world. Obviously photography's been around, but then there's digital photography, which has been around for a while. But I think AI and the advanced technology of what we can create now and how quick, what's it called? 3D printing. Have you experienced 3D printing?
Yeah. It's insane. Absolutely.
Oh my God. It's a mind. It's incredible. I don't know much about it, but I've been to a sculpture foundry up in Brisbane, and they do everything from old school bronze casting to mainly that in the foundry, but also 3D printing. And so, you just go on your computer and you put up I know it's not this easy. I don't really know how to do it. In general, you upload your thing with the right software and boop, it creates this thing, which is in perfect proportions. It could be your face or mine, and it's as light as a feather, and it makes a sculpture.
Well, they 3D build buildings now. They 3D print buildings.
I know, and they're talking about food, all sorts of things. So that, I think, is a huge thing. And the other thing is, what is it called when projection mapping? Do you know about projection mapping?
No.
So I don't know a lot about it, but it's like, when you go to a light show and say on the Opera House or wherever, and they've got all this art, the light installations. That's projection mapping. They haven't just gone, all right, I'm going to do something. I'm going to point it at that wall or that thing, and it's going to be great. It's a real way of doing projection mapping. And I know nothing about it.
I think at Sydney, what's it called? Vivid. They've got them all over the buildings. It's amazing. But coming back to the art that we create, at the end of the day, there's the materials that we use, and I'm almost, because of those things, I'm called to go even more basic with how I'm creating, to get back to that, to get back to just me and the materials and the colors and that just getting as close and as tactile as I can with the materials. And how I think, because of AI, that's going to become the way forward more and more and more as humans, is to be as human as you possibly can and have less distractions between you and your creativity.
You bloody hope so. I hope so. I pray and hope. Who knows? But I'm the same. And painting and art making is something from my soul, and I need to be touching that paint and tactile. So I need it as a person. Who knows what's going to happen in the future with that? You'd hope that it would go back to being more of that human touch. Like I said, let's just pray. Let's put it out there. Let's make it. That's all we'll talk about on this podcast now. From now on in, and we'll convince everybody.
And yet, I've got an artist son, and he's a digital artist. So he's doing everything online, but and it's, never say never, because, you look at the changes that listening to podcasts and not reading books and getting Audible books, and, everything does change, but there's something about creating, and, way back when it was just cavemen and not even having, just doing it instinctually, this idea of creating pictures as a way of putting down knowledge or transferring knowledge or just expressing what it is to be human. I don't know that, I certainly know I couldn't get it in any other way other than physically putting down paint or being in that kind of visceral experience of the creation of itself.
Yeah, well, there are many ways, aren't there, to translate an idea. But yes, I'm obsessed with paint, so I'll always have one hand at least in paint, mostly two, but this other hand also is interested in exploring those other things, and how can I bring those worlds together? That's another thing. How can we bring old traditions in with the new technologies? Yeah. Without putting it through the 3D printer and creating paintings. I don't know. But Yeah, it's an interesting time. I feel every time's an interesting time. It's called life. But yeah.
I do think it feels so much like we're on the cusp of something, whether it's good or bad or whatever. I don't want to get into, but it's just like we're in the biggest of times at the moment in so many ways.
Yeah, we might just all tip off the edge and fall off, and that'll be it.
Yeah.
You go, oh, they're right. The Earth was flat.
We got that wrong.
Oops, that's not a sky. That's the end.
That's the end. And talking about the end, I think we'll wrap this one up and we'll go on to the next one with a different conversation.
Yes.
Because that was the Monstrous Woman. I just feel like we've touched the tip of the iceberg, and we could keep coming back to that one. Many
I'm sure we will.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.